The two big stories we're going to cover today, I would put in one video because they kind of both follow along the same types of lines, but that would be a massive video if I was to do that. So we're going to separate the two here. Okay, obviously we're going to talk about the Trump rally that's going to be happening tomorrow when the votes get counted. But right now I figured, hey, why don't we just discuss some good news that's going on right now? Because the police officers who shot that felon Jacob Blake, well, they're just not going to face any charges. And yet, I love to see it because I covered it extensively right at the birth of my channel. That was the big story that was going on at the time. And I think it was like the second and third videos that I put out in consecutive days that covered all of this stuff. And well, I'll just give everybody a refresher course who thinks that Jacob Blake was just some innocent little angel who just, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And just those racist cops in Kenosha, Wisconsin, showed up and shot an unarmed black man. Well, it turned out that he had a gun. He was violating a restraining order that was there. He was fighting with a couple of the police officers, and he was going back to his own vehicle in order to procure a knife again to stab the police officers, because he said that's what he was going to do. I'm not just inferring motive, but that's what he was saying he was going to do. And then when he reached inside for either a gun or what was later confirmed to be a knife, yeah, he got shot in the back 4 times. 3 shots missed because when you're amped up and you're, like 3 or 4 feet away from him, you can fucking miss. I don't know, buddy got fucking a little too excited. But let's window dress this properly, and then we got to get to some of the reaction, and then kind of tie it in with some stuff that's going forward as well, what we can expect to happen overnight, because I think we're going to be in for, oh boy, around the country, probably about a good week of protest. Hopefully just protest. I'm not optimistic about it just being protest. In the wake of the Jacob Blake shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, police officers and the media reported what happened in a very specific way. Yes, Blake is a man who police had no reason to focus on. He'd done nothing wrong, and he was still left paralyzed. That was the media's narrative at the time. According to the records on Wisconsin Court Case Access website, Blake was wanted in connection with 3 charges filed in the previous month. This was filed at the end of August, by the way. So in July, in relation to alleged sexual assault. According to the criminal complaint, a woman who lived on the 2800 block of 40th Street called police in May and reported her former boyfriend Blake and entered her home and taken her car keys and vehicle. She told the officer Blake had also touched her sexually without consent. Warrant had been issued for the arrest on charges of 3rd-degree sexual assault, criminal trespass, and disorderly conduct. The first was a felony. The latter 2 were misdemeanors. And then at the time, I remember this, and we're going to go back and give you guys proper context as well. At the time, it was, there was the 20-second video clip, which is referenced in the article here as well, that, he was doing nothing, and the guy who was shooting it from across the street, not shooting Blake, but shooting the events that happened there, only showed the video of Jacob Blake coming around his vehicle and then reaching inside of the truck. It didn't show any of the preamble beforehand when he was wrestling with the cops to the ground, and then the after effects of the police officers staying there and making sure that proper medical attention was received for Jacob Blake at the time. And I don't have it pulled up, and I couldn't be asked to do it as well, but Jacob Blake, because he's such a great and inspiring individual, somebody who persevered through so many hardships that he faced, like a restraining order and rape accusations, and also previously wielding a knife at a strip club at police officers. But merely what we were originally going on for the first 24 hours was that 20-second video that showed, yes, Jacob Blake was completely innocent. We definitely don't have any motive for the police officers other than they were just total racists. We didn't know any of his background at the time because we really didn't have a name or anything, but the police officers clearly knew differently, and we all kind of thought as much at the beginning there anyways, that there was something that was happening before the recording was made and after the recording was made, and this is just a select little piece of video that was carefully plucked out in order to push a certain narrative and cause millions of dollars of destruction in Kenosha over the next 2 nights. But yes, the police knew who they were going after, and they knew that he was at the scene of the crime, and he also had a warrant out for his arrest, and that he was called because he was breaking a restraining order, both according to Ben Shapiro, yuck. But I will read from Andy No here. I have published the raw police scanner audio from the 23rd of August incident involving Jacob Blake, who was wanted on an outstanding warrant for a felony sex crime charge, and more. A woman called 911 and asked for help because Blake showed up at her home. That was the lady who filed the restraining order against Jacob Blake, who had those 3 previously mentioned charges brought up against him. But don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, because he was shot down by those evil racist cops who a court of law found that were not in fact evil racist cops and did nothing wrong in the matter. A Wisconsin prosecutor announced Tuesday that he will not file criminal charges against a white police officer. Thank you, Associated Press. Thank you. This is the only time that I use these mainstream articles. Just to show you, just to snap everybody back to what the normies think for a minute. Things like the race of a police officer matter in this type of context. It doesn't. It was classic self-defense. Who shot a black man in the back in Kenosha last summer, leaving him paralyzed and setting off sometimes violent protests in the city. Holy shit. You guys remember the photos from Kenosha? Just a quick search will show you how mostly peaceful protests look. Look, this is just the first page. This is it. Yes. Mostly peaceful. Yeah. If you guys are looking for the original coverage, I used this picture right here for my first thumbnail. It was of course stylized. But yeah, really, this one right here, the one with the Black Lives Matter and then everything burning down in the car park or the used car lot that was right across from it is flaming around in the background, just showing solidarity for the people who would destroy your little city. Officer Rusten Sheskey. Okay, old Rusty. Shooting of Jacob Blake on August 23rd, captured by bystander video, turned the nation's spotlight on Kenosha, Wisconsin. Let's be specific here, Associated Press. It's not like you guys have standards anymore. During a summer marked by protests over police brutality and racism. See how they're trying to frame it so that Rusty gets slandered with the police brutality and racism? Minus the fact that he was one of 3 white officers that were there. It was him, another man, and a woman who were also there reporting to the scene of the crime because he is a felon. He did have a restraining order against him, and he does have a history of violence. And realistically, at the end of the day, there was nothing really racist about George Floyd. And those are the types of misleading framings that the mainstream media does, and it captures the low information people out there. I don't use that as a slander. I'm just saying the people who don't dive into this stuff as deeply as I do and you guys who are watching this as well, they just get the headlines of this and then they run with that. And I don't have to name names, but they make themselves very obvious when they post or make any sort of comment that can be debunked within the 3rd or 4th paragraph of a article. Anyways, if I take apart every sentence of this, we'll be here for 3 hours. More than 250 people were arrested in the days that followed, including a 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who finally received bail earlier last month. Was that in December? I think it was. And was not going to be extradited back into Wisconsin. He's going to be staying at home finally. A self-styled medic, yes, who was attending to both sides of hurt rioters that night, with an assault rifle, who was charged in the fatal shootings of 2 pedophiles and another convicted felon. I forget. We went over that, but the 2 guys that he killed were kid touchers, so, and they were 100% Antifa, by the way. Let's not forget that. It'll be important later. Kenosha City District Attorney Michael Graveley said Tuesday that he wouldn't charge either Sheskey or the 2 other officers at the scene, saying they would have to disprove the clear expression of these officers that they had to fire a weapon to defend themselves. Exactly, knowing all the context that was there, seeing the additional video clips that came out in the following days, clearly shows that this dude was a fucking menace to society, but didn't stop Kamala Harris from stopping by to tell him that he was a brave individual and a good man. Oh, and by the way, yes, his kids were in the vehicle. That made everything just so much worse. Add to the fact that they would have been raised by this savage. I have no sympathy for him, in case you couldn't tell. He added, I do not believe the state would be able to prove that the privilege of self-defense is not available. Gravely said he had informed Blake the news before the news conference to announce the decision. Oh, good on him. Ben Crump, race grifter extraordinaire. An attorney for the Blake family expressed disappointment with the decision because he can no longer line his pockets with this case, saying it further destroys trust in our justice system and sends a message that it is okay for police to abuse their power. He said he will continue to move forward with a lawsuit and fight for systemic change in policing. Go fuck your mother if you can find her. But I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if we didn't dive a little bit deeper into this article to give better context, because most people at the picture there would just fucking peace out. But the Associated Press actually gives you a little bit more context the deeper you go. It's great how they like to tell people what they want them to hear, or, satisfy their own curiosity. The people who'd be clicking on the Associated Press, CBS, NBC, probably Fox News too. Let's just lump them all in there as the fucking legacy media cool kids club. Cell phone video shows Blake walking to the driver's side door of an SUV as officers follow him with guns drawn, shouting, "Stop, get down on the ground. They were telling him they were trying to de-escalate the situation, but yeah, because Blake is a strong, proud black man and ain't nobody going to tell him what to do. As Blake opens the door and leans into the SUV, grabbing for a knife, Sheskey grabs his shirt from behind and opens fire. Here's the important part. The Kenosha Police Union said Blake was armed with a knife, and Sheskey ordered him several times to drop it, but he would not. There you go. They tell you right there, but then they hide it, what? Right dead smack dab in the middle of the fucking article where nobody who's, tired by the wall of text the AP provides for this, they wouldn't bother looking for that. And if he didn't cover it originally when it started, well, at least doing a little bit more of a deep dive into figuring out what the fuck actually happened there, you never would have known that. You would have just thought, hey, this was just a black man who was shot down and gunned in the streets, and just somebody who definitely didn't have a whole bunch of fentanyl in the system and would have died of an overdose anyways. Oh wait, different story. Same outcome. But we got to touch on somebody who was very instrumental in shutting down and walking off the court and making sure that the Milwaukee Brewers canceled their games. I think it was against the Cincinnati Reds at the time. That the day that Jacob Blake was shot, and then, the sports world reacted because their ratings couldn't get any lower at the time. So the Brewers walked off the field. I do believe Jackie Bradley Jr. of the Boston Red Sox. I know the Boston Red Sox canceled or stopped their game midway through, but I'm pretty sure it was Jackie Bradley Jr. who walked off the field. And then, of course, the NBA, just the quite possibly the worst professional sports outlet. They just went fucking mental. Nobody really noticed. They just read the reporting on it because nobody was watching the NBA at the time, and still their ratings are less than ideal right now. There's just not I'd make a video on it because I have made a video on the ratings collapse in the past, but there's just not a lot of stuff out there right now. It's like, haha, they're still bad. Okay, well, it'd be like pointing and laughing at a short bus. It's like, it's a quick laugh, but it doesn't make you feel good. But if LeBron James is going to continue to put social justice above playing on the court, or I don't know, just being a decent, well-rounded human being, we got to talk about his stupid hot takes. LeBron James reacts to Rusten Sheskey's, good old Rusty, not being charged for the shooting of Jacob Blake because he only knows a little bit of the situation. I wonder how he's still getting on with that Malcolm X biography. That was one of my favorite interviews. And you guys can feel free to look that one up. Just a stumbling, mumbling prick. I guess that's what happens when you get pushed through high school. You've been told you're great your entire life. Los Angeles Lakers star LeBron James expressed his frustration upon learning that Rusty Sheskey won't be charged in the August shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Very well thought out tweet. At all. And a bunch of boomer emojis. I wonder if he's responded back to the chief of police for Los Angeles when those two police officers were sitting in the police cruiser and then they were gunned down and in a blatant attack that was attempted murder. And Black Lives Matter blocked the entrances to the hospital and they were yelling outside, hopefully they die, or something to that matter. And the chief of police of Los Angeles challenged LeBron James to make any kind of statement or perhaps match the reward that the LA County Sheriff's Department or the police department, somebody put up a bail, and LeBron James went completely silent on that because he is just not somebody you should put any sort of political stock in. I like him as an athlete. That is where my appreciation for LeBron James ends. What he does on the court is spectacular, and I don't think anybody can refute that. That's about it. Kenosha police reported to an alleged domestic disturbance. Yep. And as the Bleacher Report calls it, video showed Blake walking towards the driver's side door of a gray SUV, and two police officers followed behind him with their guns drawn. Only one did. One police officer grabbed Blake's tank top before multiple gunshots were heard. Nothing mentioned about the wrestling match that happened beforehand, the police officers telling him to de-escalate the situation, and no police officers telling their side of the story that he was reaching inside the cab of the SUV to grab a weapon, per CNN's Scott Glover. Rusty said during the investigation he was concerned Blake was attempting to flee the scene while a child inside the SUV. A knife was also discovered on the floorboard of the vehicle. See how that's just nonchalantly put in there? Blake's shooting came as Americans across the country were protesting against systemic racism, blah, 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 trying to do the same slander job that the Associated Press was doing. 3 days after Blake was shot, the Milwaukee Bucks refused to take the floor for an NBA game against, the Orlando Magic. Bucks guard George Hill said the team organized a spontaneous protest because, I don't know, being inside that Disneyland or Disney World bubble just makes your mind go a little bit squirrely, or just exposes who you truly are. But anyways, that's enough about privileged millionaires doing stupid things in the name of, I don't know, appealing to social justice in China. But yeah, the Bleacher Report doesn't mention that there were a whole bunch of riots that came out of this Self-Defense Act, which now we can definitively say, according to the courts. No mention to that, okay? No mention to the fact that it was Antifa and Black Lives Matter, whatever you want to call that little coalition, which is slowly coming apart at the seams because Black Lives Matter wants front page billing, and Antifa is too weak to say no, but that entire thing is murky at the moment. But no mention to that. No mention to that. They just want social justice. What does that mean? We want supremacy. Really? No. What? They don't even have a consistent message, so fuck them. But we all seen the violence. We all seen the aftermath of it. But as we can see here, House Majority Leader Hoyer says he doesn't accept the premise that Antifa is violent. Well, sometimes people just want to believe in fantasy and can't accept the real truth. It happens on both sides, okay? There was Russiagate for a very long time, and then there's following a man who believes that he's the second coming of Christ on the other side. I don't know. Okay, but denouncing, or just saying that Antifa isn't the cause of nightly violence in most places across the summer, like even Ted Wheeler said Antifa extremists or Antifa anarchists. He's called them out by name finally. But if you're just going to be an old crusty fuck and not accept reality, dude, I don't know what the fuck you're on. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer on Tuesday slammed Texas Republican Louis Gohmert, a man who just wants to know what the fuck to do on Wednesday. Like, what can we expect from Mike Pence tomorrow? I don't know. We'll get to that shortly. Next video. Recent statement critical of Antifa and Black Lives Matter, saying that he doesn't accept the premise that those groups are violent. He's not alone in that one because Joe Biden thinks that Antifa is just a myth. And same with shit his pants Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader? No. My apologies, Ralph. I meant Jerry Nadler. Did you guys see that clip where he looked like he shit his pants and he shuffled off stage? It also could be because he's nearly fucking 80 years old, like all of these Democrat hacks. I'm also not taking Trump off that list too because the dude is 74 right now. That's why I'd rather he just has his second term now instead of in 4 years. Because enough with these people that are well into their fucking 70s and then in Pelosi's case into their 80s. Leading a country when you normally wouldn't give anybody over the age of 65 your fucking half an ear if they aren't your grandparents. But anyways, oh yeah, take a look. Hoyer, a Maryland Democrat. Oh, fucking color me surprised. Said Gohmert seemed to be encouraging people to come to Washington and take up violence if they called for it in order to express their belief that it was not an honest and fair election, referencing a judge's decision to deny Vice President Mike Pence the ability to overturn the election results, something that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson did in their own elections there in the past. But yeah, it's something that Pence can't do now. Why? Because reasons and don't ask questions. But yeah, even just the news here, it's like the ability to overturn the election results. Or just look at the slate of electors before them and realize, yeah, there's still a whole bunch of outstanding cases here, and these electors are in dispute, and we're going to have to figure out what's going to go on because Ted Cruz is calling for his panel that originally convened in 1876 to figure out what the fuck happened there with Rutherford B. Hayes that led to the creation of the Electoral Count Act, which is still vague, and so is the 12th Amendment. It's a whole big thing. Gohmert said, if the bottom line is what? The court is saying, what? We're not going to touch this. You have no remedy. Basically, in effect, the ruling would be that you've got to go to the streets and be as violent as Antifa and BLM. Gohmert walked back the comments over the weekend. If I read that sentence, I don't think that there's anything terribly wrong with it, but then at the same time, you can construe that as saying that, yeah, okay, if you're going to be there, if you're on the Trump side, you should just be as violent as Antifa and BLM because you don't expect them to do anything else. Yeah, I could see that, how it could be a problematic, I hate saying that, statement as an elected official. So, okay, yeah, if you're going to walk back that's fine. And how we did it, yeah, was classy here. I've not encouraged and unequivocally do not advocate for violence. Yeah, just clean it up, okay? Because people could take that out of context, like we haven't seen that before in the past couple of days, especially with a certain phone call. Yeah, okay, clean it up, that's fine. I have long advocated for following the teachings and example of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. of peaceful protests. That does not keep me from recognizing what lies ahead when institutions created by self-governing people to peacefully resolve their disputes hide from their responsibility. Violence is not the answer. The appropriate answer is the courts and self-governing bodies resolving disputes as intended. I think that's what every reasonable human being, whether they're liberal or conservative, Republican, Democrat, black, white, brother, sister, mother, father. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not being politically correct enough to be in Congress. Oh, there go my hopes for being in the 118th Congress, by God. But okay. Yeah, Gomer's making a very reasonable statement there. He's clearing up what he said before. Doesn't take away from the fact everybody knows that Antifa and BLM, Blantifa, we're going to go with Blantifa from now on, tearing up streets, breaking windows, knocking over mailboxes. That's a man act. They do all that fun stuff, except for being men. They do a very terrible job of doing that. And to be completely honest, the violence only ever comes from one side. Okay, the left has their boogeyman in the Proud Boys, and we'll touch on that here shortly because that is a whole different story for the time being. I'm just bringing them up as an example. Don't think that I'm not going to be covering that story as well. But due to the fact that Jacob Blake's shooter, not the previous crime that he was charged for, but the police officer, good old Rusty there, he will not be charged, so we've all seen this cycle before, okay? Black man does something bad, gets shot by cops, riots for the next couple of nights, wait for the trial, something that doesn't happen that appeases the riotous mob, riots happen. Minnesota, Louisville, and now we can expect the exact same thing in Kenosha. And it looks like Tony Evers is hot on the pop with this one. National Guard deployed to Kenosha on eve of Jacob Blake decision. They are there right now, guys. This is a story from January 4th, but they're going to be there tonight as well. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers is deploying 500 National Guard troops. He also said that he deployed 500 National Guard troops to Kenosha back there in the summer when the first set of riots were going through, but people who actually had feet on the ground were saying, we couldn't find any of the National Guard that were there, so take that with a grain of salt, I suppose. To Kenosha in anticipation of the unrest as prosecutors announced whether there will be charges in the shooting of Jacob Blake. City workers on Monday finished installing security fences around the Kenosha courthouse as cops closed off side streets in anticipation of protests. City police said in a statement Sunday that the measures were among the planned precautionary efforts to ensure safety because they actually believe that Antifa is a riotous group of individuals. Trump has tweeted out that they're terrorists and they shouldn't be allowed to run about and do their stuff. And if you don't want to take Trump's word for it, just go ahead and take Ted Wheeler's word for it. They're kind of running out of allies in places of power, so this might get quashed. There might be nothing overnight. I highly doubt it. For as many people that are mobilizing and flying out to Washington for tomorrow's protest that's going to be happening, you can bet your bottom dollar that there are people who are flying, driving, thumbing a ride in order to get to Kenosha to partake in any of the violence that might be happening tonight. I fully expect something to be happening. And if there is, unfortunately, we'll have to talk about this tomorrow. But as it sits right now, there's National Guard on alert. The local police is on alert, and barricades are being erected because this is a third world shithole right now where courts don't want to look at any sort of lawsuits, and the police officers are just as likely to arrest and take rioters seriously as they are to enforce unconstitutional mask and gathering mandates. So we'll see how the cards fall in this one. And we got to talk about that fun protest that's going to be happening tomorrow. Jeez, if I could cross the border, I'd be there. That just looks like it's going to be a fun time. Anyways, guys, I thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.